Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Argon. So with the new combat rework, we can now finally use active companions to help us within combat again. Instead of using these useless companions that all they would do would just give us stats and hang around lazily in combat like the bullet pop. Now you'll still be able to use augment companions of course, very viably at that, but you might want to consider running an actual active companion. In this video, I'm going to show you guys the actual companions that will help you do more damage. They're going to assist you in dealing more damage. They're not actually going to deal more damage themselves. These companions would be ideal for buffing your party so that your party members deal more damage. And now ideally your tank or your healer would run these companions, or if you're running a support DPS build, you would also run one of these companions. So I'm going to go over most of the companions that are available within the game that will buff your party damage. First up, we have the actual Stalwart Lion. This one right here. He has the power Orlent Roar, where he will basically cause a sky-shattering roar that grants nearby party members 2 stacks of Radiant Weapon. And Radiant Weapon stacks grant 2% additional damage as Radiant damage for 12 seconds. However, you can have no more than 8 of these stacks, so you could have multiple of these lions in a party and gain multiple of these stacks, and each of those stacks essentially gives you 2% more damage. We go and we attack a dummy here, a lion will roar, and he gives me those stacks there in the top left there. And you can see those stacks will last for a period of time, and I have 2 of them currently. Whenever I deal damage, you can see I'm dealing extra damage numbers when he roars again. And about 5 seconds after it expires, he roars again, and will deal that extra damage as radiant damage. Now for the rest of your party members, it will deal a straight up 4% extra damage for them, rather than dealing extra radiant damage as like procs, as you can see. When we look on the combat tracker and we look at my outgoing damage, we can see I'm dealing extra radiant weapon damage, and this is purely from the lion. Now this damage for the summoner is pretty small, all things considered. So it's better that again a support would run this companion so that everybody else gains that straight up 4% more damage, and the summoner gains that extra damage on their attacks, the radiant damage basically. Everybody else just gets 4% more damage. So next up we're going to move to the next companion, where we have the Pseudo Dragon. Now the Pseudo Dragon has a power down here, Rampart Venom, where he will poison his target, and the poisoned enemies shall become more vulnerable, granting combat advantage, and they shall take more damage from this companion's snapping jaws. But the wording on this is a bit tricky, and let's figure out, does it actually grant other people who attack that same target more damage? Oh, this Pseudo Dragon is one of the cutest. He goes to sleep when we're AFK. That's really cool. Anyway, we attack the dummy, and he goes and he uses his tail spike thing. So first he stings it, and he puts that debuff on it, and you can see it grants combat advantage to us all around. It's only for a short period though. And does it actually benefit us to deal more damage? Well, we shall see. We'll let him attack it again, giving that debuff, and it deals that additional damage. So let's see. We open the combat tracker here again, and here we have my damage. We go to outgoing damage, and this time we go to our Oath Strike. And looking at our Oath Strike, we can see the effectiveness here. Now we currently have a pile of the dodges and a pile of non-dodges. When the dummy dodges, our effectiveness of our damage is decreased, but when it doesn't, it's higher. And so this is our normal effectiveness, 66.7. And if we can see any numbers here that are higher than those 2 numbers, the 42.2 or the 66.7, then yes, the companion would give us additional damage. It would raise our effectiveness. But it appears that that debuff, that damage over time effect that the Pseudo Dragon does with that sting, all it does is just make the target grant combat advantage along with dealing damage over time. So it's a bit disappointing that this tail sting doesn't give us additional damage. It only gives himself more damage. So we move to the Rust monster. The Rust monster has a similar power, where when we look down here, the hyper corrosion, basically the rusting caused by the corrosive touch from this companion, becomes rampart, spreading to the target's armor, causing them to take additional damage over time. But again, is this just for the companion, or do we benefit from being able to deal additional damage? Again, we'll check it exactly the same. We attack the dummy, we can see the rust monster attacks it, and we gain that, you can just about see it flash up sometimes. It gains like a weak thing. You can saw it just there underneath the numbers. And when we hover over it, you can see that it has that debuff on it. But does this give us extra damage? Well, again, looking at the actual combat log, going to my damage, going to my oath strike, we look at the effectiveness. And again, we have no varying effectiveness. We just have the dodges at the same 42.2 and the non-dodges, the 66.7, meaning we have no increase in effectiveness, meaning, again, this companion's not going to give us any extra damage. So we move to the next. We have the Scorpion. Now, straight up, I can tell you guys this isn't going to give you any more damage, but indirectly it could. If you're running a trial like Zariel or such, and you're with a party where you have to keep moving around, and getting combat advantage on the boss can be much harder. And this is why you would run a companion like the Scorpion. You can see when he hits it with his tail, it now grants combat advantage to us. And the very beneficial thing with this companion is that combat advantage effect is up all of the time. It lasts for a certain duration, and then the Scorpion will refresh the effect before it expires, meaning we can always get combat advantage against this target. However, this is a single target attack, so it's only ever going to be good against boss fights. I know for a fact in Rise of Tiamat, this is one of the best companions to run with because of it being able to give us combat advantage from any direction. And the problem with Rise of Tiamat is that we can't get to the other side of the dragon to flank it. So this way, you would run this companion as being one of the best to help your party deal more damage. But that's all that companion is going to do. Going to grant you 100% uptime combat advantage. So we go to the next companion. We go to the Spined Devil. Now this Spined Devil has a power called Impaling Fork, where they will forcefully throw a pitchfork that impales the target, making them vulnerable for a short duration. Is this the same as the other powers? Let's find out. So we attack the dummy again, and now this little companion will first throw a few pitchforks, and then he'll throw his big pitchfork, this one, and it'll strike the target, and you can see this debuff on him. Now, does this debuff give us more damage? Let's find out. So we are attacking the target, and we shall see in the combat log, I'll go to it right now, we look into our damage, our outgoing damage, our oath strike again, and we can see our effectiveness has gone up. Standardly, it's at that 66.7, and it has gone up to 73.3%, meaning it has given us a total of 6.6% extra effectiveness on our damage, meaning we deal a total of 10% more damage when this actual debuff is on the target. Now, from what I can tell, this devil can get that debuff on the target nearly most of the time. You could say at least about 70% of the time that debuff is on. That aside, this companion is one of the best to help your party members deal extra damage when they have combat advantage. If you don't have combat advantage, highly recommend running with the actual Black Death Scorpion. Now that's the Spined Devil, and out of the list here so far what we have tested, it's the best, giving you 6.6% extra damage. Now we go to the next companion on our list. Now there's the Incubus and there's the Succubus. Now these two companions are pretty much identical, just one is female and one is male. And when we attack with her, she'll go and do her powers, and we'll see does she give additional damage. She blows that kiss and you can see the same debuff on that target as we have for the actual Spined Devil. So looking at her actual powers here, you can see that she has this deadly kiss where it damages enemies and causes vulnerability for a brief duration to those enemies in that cone. This means this companion is the best one for when you're fighting mobs. But the duration I found on this actual companion isn't very long whatsoever. The debuff only remains for a total of 5 seconds, unlike the Spine Devil, which remains for 10 seconds. It's still good, and it's going to most definitely help your party deal more damage in an AoE environment, because her attack is a cone, unlike the Spine Devil only being single target. So I would run her when you're fighting lots of enemies, and I would run the Spine Devil when you're going against a boss. This is if you want to help your party deal more damage. Now, that's pretty much everything I have available to me right here. There are 2 other companions which I'm missing, which is Zariel and Zordiel. You can get Zordiel from the Zen Market, and Zariel was a limited time in the leaderboards for the Redeemed Citadel, farming that favor. And they have an effect where they can cause 1% at a chance on their power. Now this, in my opinion, is pretty terribly small, so it's not going to create much of an impact whatsoever. And I didn't want to really invest in wasting Zen just for testing purposes. And I have asked around, and yeah, it's nothing special on their power. It's a chance, and it doesn't regularly have much of an uptime. So you can't be really relied upon to do much whatsoever. So that's going to be it. My conclusions are, I highly recommend running the Black Death Scorpion when you want to have permanent uptime of combat advantage on a single target, especially in places where you cannot have that, like in Rise of Taiman. Then you would run the Spine Devil. You would run it to give that extra damage. Now, on top of running the Spine Devil, let's say the tank could run the Spine Devil, and the healer would ideally then run the Stalwart Lion, and you would have 2 companions there giving you that extra damage. And then you would run, let's say, the Succubus instead of running the Spine Devil when you're against lots of mobs. And that's pretty much it. The Stalwart Lion is pretty good against mobs as well, as he does his roar, and it's a large area, and it directly affects nearby party members rather than just affecting the enemies. So you'll have this up all the time as long as you're close enough to him for that to roar to affect you and buff you up. So with that said, this is going to conclude the video. Spine Devil is the best for single target, and then you have the Stalwart Lion, and then you would have the Succubus. Outside of that, there are other companions as a DPS that you might want to run that actually deal their own damage at a pretty good rate, and you might want to run those over these companions. This is why I highly recommend these companions, mainly just for support characters. I will make future videos on healing companions and also pure damage companions. So hopefully I presented this well, and if I did, consider leaving the video a like, and if you're new around here, consider subscribing, and we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.